Greetings, salutations, and all good things in between. What's up, everyone? Matt here. Happy Friday. I got some more fall time stuff going on here. Man, it's starting to get really nice out here. I live, where I live, I've got like a lake over here, and then there's like this giant cliff that runs like a mile over along like a highway like this. And I gotta tell you, man, oh, wow, the colors inside this mix and the fact that it's got this really high ridge, it's really photogenic. It's awesome. Anyways, enough of that. Fall time. I love it. I'm a regular shutterbug. So, what do we got on the docket today? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give a little insight about myself and my background. I realize I've never really done that on the channel like this, so I'm going to do that. There hasn't been very much from AppSheet. Kind of, you know, it's kind of standard these days, whatever. But I do have a lot of really good comments and questions from people. So I'm gonna go over those, both from YouTube and from patrons. And if you have any questions, burning things that you're trying to solve or whatever, put them in the comments below in the live chat. I'll answer them at the end of the stream. Other than that, the real big thing, the only one last thing I got here is I've got a new sample app on deck. A lot of people could call this a universal app. Stay tuned to find out what it is. Let's get to it, everybody. Hey, it worked this time. I finally got the automation thing smoothed out. Happy days. So just the first thing that I want to go over today is I realize I have never really gone over my background, right? About not the technical side of stuff, but I actually have experience as an educator. So for years, for about 4 or 5 years, I was actually a GED tutor where I helped adults get their high school equivalency, can't say the word, but you get their GED. And during that time, I also worked as a ESL teacher's assistant. And there was an unfortunate sequence of events that happened where the teacher that I was the assistant for got really, really sick and wasn't able to come back for the rest of the year. And the department wasn't able to afford a full-time substitute teacher because this was like at the beginning of the school year. And so they asked me, would I mind filling in? And I'm like, well, I'm not a teacher. I never went to school for this. I don't know what I'm doing. And they're like, no, it's cool. We got you. We'll help fill in the gaps and we'll, help you make it all work. And so why not, So for years, I was a fill-in ESL teacher, English as a second language, teaching people how to read, write, speak English. And it was during that time that's where I really gained my, drive, my fire for educating people. Because it's amazing to be able to see someone go from struggling to succeeding. Do you know what I mean? And there's a point of pride and there's an uplifting effect that, I personally get when I see somebody move past that barrier that they've been stuck on for so long and they're able to finally start flying. It's fantastic. So, that's kind of my little spiel about the background. So what really brought this up is I was having a discussion with a patron supporter of mine, and I told them about how I had this experience, and then they're like, oh, so you're not just making videos to just be like, hey, look at me, what I can do. You're actually trying to help and teach people. And I was like, yeah, I guess I've never made that clear. So, there we are. Over these past few months since I've started doing this YouTube thing, and there's more of this back and forth that goes on between you guys and me, I find myself falling back into that mindset of the educator that I had back then. And the starting to feel like I'm an educator, right? And the world is my student. But anyways, that's all I wanted to go over on that. I just thought I'd get a little, little background, little history about what I got going on with my educational teaching type stuff and why I do what I do. All right, that's enough of that. Let's move on to the next section. All right, the first question comes from, it's just something that it's not from any one person. I've actually had this asked to me from several different people. It comes from the blueprint side of stuff. So what am I talking about there? I'm talking about I've got one table where I've got a set of records inside them, and it's storing like the template information for the record data, right? So I have one set of that, and then I have another set of records where this is where we're actually like collecting the data. And from the records here, they use the stuff from over there. So I call that a blueprint table, this side of it. And one of the questions that I often get from people is, what values should I copy over from my blueprint table to my target table? And to answer that, the best place that you could really go look is in the shopping cart 4.2 or 4.1, either one. Because that's the one where I implemented a blueprint table into things, where the blueprint side of things is the regular products table. If I go and I show you, the regular products table, and so hold up, here we go. So this is the blueprint, all right? And then we got the target over here of the customer products. So the idea is that we take information from, that's not the right one. We take information from this guy, from products, and we connect it into customer products when we're making these copies. The question I get is, what values or what fields am I supposed to copy over when I'm making that copy? There's a couple of rule of thumbs. The first thing is if you go to your target table, so for me, this is my customer products. If you go in here, the trick, right, is to really look at what's required and what has an initial value or not. So for instance, looking at this table here, you can see I have 4 columns that are required. One of these is the key, it's the ID, and it's got this unique ID formula on it. So I can largely ignore that column. I don't have to do anything for it. This is the same sort of thing that you do for any other column that's required, but it has an initial value. You don't need to do anything for it. The initial value will take care of whatever it needs to do when it's creating the record. The thing to do, though, is you need to think about, is the value that formula is going to make what I want my copied record to have? Do I want that initial value to do what it normally does, or do I want the value in this thing to override what it would originally be and copy it over? If you need to copy it over, that's one of the fields that you would include inside your action for making the copy. So if I come down here and I go to my products table, I have this copy customer product, copy product to customer product. And so like if I wanted to override one of these columns that had an initial value on it, this is where I would put it. I would select the column that I want to modify, and I would say set this to whatever field over here that I want it to be, or type in the value, or you get what I mean. Like that's the idea. The other things to note, if I go back to my target table here, this is the customer products. So I'm looking at what's required and what has an initial value. So if it doesn't have an initial value, like these 3 columns here, that means that I absolutely need to set something for those columns. Do you know what I mean? Because if I was to just create this record, and I didn't do anything for this customer link, this product link, or this product name, okay, but here you go. Now if you look, not only consider the initial values, but also look at the app formula. So like product name is required, but it's got a formula on it. So I don't need to do anything for that one. So I only have to consider these 2. But I absolutely have to set something to those 2 because there's no formula, there's nothing going on. So those are the ones that I would copy over. The one thing to make sure that you don't copy over is the key. That means, so like if I'm on my product table and I'm copying a record to the customer products, I do not want to take the ID of the product and copy it to the ID of the customer product. Or even if I was just legit duplicating product into product, even if I was doing this, most definitely I would not want to copy the key from the product into this other product, because then I'd be creating a duplicate record and you run into all kinds of problems. Do you know what I mean? So those are the general rules of thumb to follow when it comes to what should I override, what should I copy, all right? The next one is all about is about the sample app that I released on Tuesday, which is I finally got around to it, the grouped PDF. And the question was, in the beginning of the video, I stated that if you want to make a grouping, you have to have a table for it. And I was like, you can't do it any other way, it doesn't work, blah, blah, blah. What I'm talking about here is like, I've got construction job entries, and then I want to group that by job types. So I was saying it's absolutely required to have a job types table in order to get this grouping thing to work. I mean, after that, I also did the whole,
ain't nobody, where are you going? Another way, always another way.
I did that thing, you know, but you can do it without including this layer. You could just create a start statement for your grouping that would use the original records for the group instead of using using this other layer. The difference here is it's really all about future proofing. A lot of the times whenever I suggest ways of doing things and I'm like, this is the way that you need to do something, usually the reason why I've settled on that is multifaceted, and trying to explain the reasons of all the reasons why and then like supporting them all, ain't nobody got time for that. So like that's so I usually kind of condense things and simplify them as much as I can. Just to go into why you would want to create a grouped layer like this, when you create a layer inside your database, suddenly you've now got space in order to do things. You've got space horizontally, because now I can add other columns into this group. I could add simple analysis columns into the mix to where maybe I have a bot that runs on the schedule every day that runs through all of my time logs, and it does a statistical analysis of all of the whatevers for this group, and it puts the results of that inside these columns. I have space to store all of the results of that work in that table. Also, whenever you need to get a list of the things inside the group, you no longer have to do this convoluted select this, that, and whatever. Do you know what I mean? You don't have to do any of that anymore. All you need to do is just go get the list from the group. Because if I go and I show you my group on my construction, so my child records are the job entries, job types is the parent. If I go look at job types, I have a list of all of the entries right here. I don't have to do a select statement or a filter or you know what I mean? Like the work is already done and just cached right here ready for me to go. And it's done using ref rows and references and everything, so it's hyper efficient, takes one pass over the data. I could go on and on and on about why this is a good idea. But anyways, I just thought that I would touch on like the reason why I settle on certain things and is usually multifaceted. And if you want to know more, all you got to do is ask, and I'll be happy to elaborate. The next question comes from, if I can get it, here we go, from Lukas Zeman. He says, what if they, this is about the video that I put out that's a simpler, for me, I prefer this as is almost a foolproof order of operations. If you do it 1, 2, 3, 4, you're good to go. As long as you get number 1 done right the first time, then you're good to go. That's the key. So Lucas asks, what if they decrease the amount of rooms and you need to delete? Yeah. So what do you do if I've got this looping system to where, let's say, for instance, in the example for this video, I had a field where I said, how many do you want to make, right? And you just entered a number. And then I had a loop that was like, all right, well, count how many records we are. If that count is less than what they said, make another one, right? So like Lucas is asking, what happens if I reduce that number? All right, well, my video, I didn't cover that at all, what you need to do. I did, however, cover that inside my join table many-to-many video that you can see. If you check that out, now that I'm thinking about it, I'll put a link in the description after the stream. Inside there is a whole order of operations of things that have to go on in order for you to delete the right ones. In this instance, this is just a number, right? So like I said, I want to create 5 things, and so it creates 5 records. And then if I say, oh, never mind, I only want 3. In that instance, I wouldn't just want to willy-nilly delete whatever. Like, just pick 2 out of the list and delete them. Bad idea. I wouldn't want to do that, right? Because maybe it's going to pick the wrong ones. So when it's something like that, where it's just a number, right? I'd really just leave it to just go and manually delete the things that you want. That way you can pick the right ones and get it out of the way. You know what I mean? But if your looping is not based on a number like this, but it's based on an actual list of things that need to be done, such as in my join table many-to-many video and sample app, I've got employees and projects, and then the join table is the employee project assignments, right? And so like what happens if I'm on the employee side and in their list of assigned projects, I remove one? How do I delete the record here and remove it from the other side? That's, I think, what Lucas is talking about. And to be honest with you, to make that work smoothly and efficiently, it's not as straightforward as you're thinking. So check out that video. There's a lot of nuance and 1, 2, 3s that you got to make sure you get right. Check that out. I'll put a link in the description afterwards. The next question comes from, it's actually a whole bunch of questions. It's about the databases video that I put out where I had Shirley come on and talk about the new thing that they're doing. There was a lot of really good questions for this. The first one that I will settle on here is from Graham. Graham says, hi Matt, good to see an interview with an AppSheet product manager. Would be great if you could do more of these. I agree. I'm trying to make that happen. Do you think this will solve the problem of having to configure your same sheet in multiple apps since you are specifying in the database build that this is a text column, this is a reference to this table, etc.? Or will we still need to be able to configure the same table over and over again in all the apps where the table appears when we make the change? I kind of hit myself for not asking that question. That is a really good question, and I want to know the answer to that too. I'll tell you this. So the privileged position that I've been afforded with having some insider connections on AppSheet, I can tell you this is like the holy grail that everybody over there is wanting to get to. Like the engineers, the product manager, like they all feel this pain. They all feel it. They get it. You know what I mean? Like it's a problem for them too. So they're trying to solve it. They're working on it. And I can tell you there are some steps that have been made that are moving in the direction of solving the problem that will eventually hopefully have fruit, but it's going to be a long time out. Like next year, June, July, this time next year, it'll be a while. Unless they've got some like super secret whatever that they're not telling anybody about and they're like, hey, it could happen, who knows? But I wouldn't hold your breath. It's coming, but not anytime soon. The next thing on the same databases comes from Suleim Thupsi Technologies. They say, lovely, developing a high-tech shopping app with AppSheet. Woo-hoo. Was impressed to see the databases show up in the new development environment. Cheers for having Shirley speak on the databases feature. Thank you, Salim. I appreciate that. JP Alpano says, this is exactly how Google Table looks like. You know, I kind of said the same thing. Oscar piped in. Good Lord, can't talk. Oscar piped in and said it kind of looks like a fork of databases. And if I remember right, Shirley, somebody said this, maybe it was JP, in the post for the actual thing. And I think Shirley said that this is actually something that's different. It's not the same thing. Maybe it's a fork. I don't know if they said that. But she did mention that this is a different thing that's native for AppSheet. So, the last one here from Mohammed says, exciting. Do you think they'll support real-time sync for chat apps and perhaps even implement some Firebase features like Firebase functions and database queries via a query language? It's possible, maybe. In the interview, Shirley did mention that they are very keen for feedback, not only on like your pain points and the problems that you're having, but also what you want to use this for, what features you want to see. So this might be a thing if it's just a matter of throwing it out there and enough people being like, yeah, this is a good idea, right? As far as chat apps come, this actually, I had like 3 people ask this question. That's coming because the question comes because in the Google Next thing, they did like a demonstration on how you're going to be able to implement a chat app functionality for your AppSheet app. The thing that I think people are missing is that that's only going to be for your business workplace marketplace. So it's not like you're going to be able to deploy that to the world. It's going to be inside your personal Google Workspace thing. You following me here? That was like a little, fine print thing that I noticed. It was like, okay, a lot of people seem to be missing that. Now, maybe they'll expand it eventually, but I'm pretty sure in the very beginning, it's just going to be inside a Google Workplace thing. But if you have a Google Workplace, then hey, happy days. You'll be able to deploy part of your AppSheet app and interact with it in such a way of like a chat app. Wow, I can't wait for that. It's going to be so dope. Who knows? Who knows when and where that's going to come down the line? But you know it's coming. Good stuff. All right, that's all I got for this one. Make sure if you have any kind of questions, I see one popped in there from Light, I'll get to them. Thank you for the questions. Put them in the chat. I'll get to them in the end. Let's move on to the next section. What's new in AppSheet news? We had a whole bunch of bug things that went out, but I'm not going to go over them. There's some good stuff. You can see them in the releases if you want. There's obviously a lot of debate and a lot of discussion that's going on inside the releases for the database thing and the new UX view, the new UX look. I have it on my account. I'm pretty sure you probably have it on yours as well. Like the main navigator thing on the side is now just a bunch of actions or just a bunch of icons, doesn't have the words. They put the settings thing there. So, I mean, that happened. Other than that, though, like the only real big thing is they removed the little floating button that they had. If you remember when you were on the editor, there was a little blue floaty thing that was like down here in the very corner of your screen. You could click on it and get to the help documents. If you were having any kind of discussions with support that they were inside there, that's gone. That's gone. So that's really all that's happened inside AppSheet. It's been a very quiet week like this. The next thing I'm gonna move on to is all your Patreon questions. And yeah, I'm gonna do the thing. It jumped ahead to the other one. It's not chat time yet. I'm not on that one. It jumped ahead. Moving on. So if you are a Patreon supporter of mine, you have the ability to submit questions and topics that you would like me to do a deep dive. I'll be honest with you, my Patreon supporters, like you guys are really the ones that drive all of this. If it wasn't for all of you, I wouldn't really have the space and the time to focus on making a nice production and covering a lot of good topics in deep detail. So thank you to you guys. You have no idea how much it means. The first question I'm going to cover, first couple of questions I'm going to cover, come from Jared Mazzis. He asks, let me get it up here on the screen, tap actions and the fallback. So, why am I not being taken to the detail view of a record when I tap on a record? What he's talking about there is, if you think about the shopping cart app, right? When I tap on one of the products, if I have a building order over here like this, when I tap on the product like this number 6 here, I'm not taken to the detail view. I'm instead, this quantity thing pops up, right? So the question was, how can I get the detail view to show back up? Like, what happens if, what happens if I'm on this, if I'm on this deck view, and if I go to the deck view, and I come here to the on click, and I say, you know, I've got this on this tap, this product thing, but what if I didn't do that? What if I just had it on add new line item to this product? Okay, so if I was to just do that, what happens in that situation is the action that I selected, this add new line item, that has a condition on it so that it only fires off whenever I've got a building order. So if I leave that as the only thing that happens when I tap on this deck action, when the condition for that action does not equal true, nothing happens. And I don't know if I can show you that. I don't know if this will let me process things in that way, like change the tap thing on the fly like this. No, it didn't, but okay. So the question then is, when I'm not doing a building order, how can I get this list of products to take me to the product? Okay, what you do is, instead of setting it to just the make a new product thing, create a sequence action. So that's what this tap this product thing is. If I go to actions and I go to the product table and we look at it, I have this action that is a composite action. You can see I got a bunch of stuff inside of here. The key here though is that I've got this sort of fallback right here at the very bottom that is view this product. If I go and I show you that action, so this is literally just saying link to row, whatever the row is in the product detail view. And if I come down here, it has a condition on it to where this only fires off if is blank building order. So like if I come over here and my new order is available, so that means that my building order slice is blank, so this condition is now true. So if I come over here and I tap on the product, and if we go back to look at the product, so when I tap on it, it's going to do all of these 4 things. Okay, it only did the one thing because if I come to my stack, this has a condition that excludes it, this has a condition that excludes it, this has a condition that excludes it, this one has a condition that includes it. That's how you can get that to work. You have to make sure that you put that fallback in there. And on this example, inside the shopping cart sample app, I put a condition on my view product fallback where it only works if it's blank. A lot of times I actually leave that empty to where that fallback is a fallback 100% of the time. Like no matter what happens, if the stack gets to that point, that's going to fire off. That's usually how I go about it. Not quite sure why I did it that way. I'm sure there was a reason. But anyways, make sure you put the fallback. That's the key. The next question comes from Jared Mazzis. He says, how can I change my detail view header to look better if it's too long. So what is he talking about? He's talking about, so if I come over here to one of my apps, this is the inspection app that I'm going to go into detail here about in a few moments. But like, if I come here and let's just change this view, and like I'll get rid of this and let's put, I don't know, this thing here. All right, so he's asking, what do I do if this is too long and it looks like crap? Well, the thing to do, I'm trying to see if I can find something that's really, really long that would let me show you this sort of, because what it does is it kind of cuts it off. All right, so I can't find one that'll work. Sorry, there you go. Right, so what do you do if your thing looks like that? All right, you might be unaware, but this header column setting actually has the varying degrees of formatting inside it. For instance, if I have one, this first one will be very big. If I add another one into the mix, it's smaller and it's not bold. It's not as bold. You see what I mean? And if I add another one, like if I take that crazy one, it's even smaller than the first one. This is a show column, that's why it's so weird. But like maybe if I'm looking for something that'd be really big, but of course I don't have anything that has a whole lot of text in it. But you get what I mean. Like this first one up here is bigger than all of them. It's like header 1. If you were to think about this in terms of, like header 1, header 2, header 3, that's how this is operating. When I put these things in this order like this, it's really doing like 1, 2, 3, and applying the same sort of, lesser degrees of emphasis for each one. That is how you can make your header things look better. Sometimes it's just a matter of not putting the one that you were thinking of as the primary one as the first one, because there's like a really long name or whatever, and put something else on top, like the status of the thing, completed, in progress, like something that's like a single word. Put that as the first one because it'll be big, and then put your longer name that's like, half a sentence, do that as the second one because it'll be smaller and it'll probably fit. The next question comes from Hennie. Hennie asks, "Hi Matt, I have to make a decision regarding scalability of an app that I have. There we go. Try to see if I get it really, there you go, you can read it now. I have 23 users and roughly 2,500 records that are being added to the app every day. I use security filters to manage the data, but I am starting to get Google Sheets errors. Too many people are trying to modify the spreadsheet." That's fun. My question, which of the following would you recommend to make the app more scalable? Use data partitioning, add extra Google Sheets, start using BigQuery, start using a MySQL database. So what we're really, well, we go back up here and we kind of take a hard look at what's going on here. So you got 23 users, 2,500 records a day. So each person's creating roughly 100-ish records a day. The first thing that I would try and do is I would try and see if there's a way that you could reduce that number of records. Maybe there's a way you could, instead of having them create records all the time, maybe you could create and edit a record. Or, create, edit, create, edit, create, edit, and that would cut the number in half. Or maybe you could create a group, and the group could serve as, something. I don't even know. Like that's the thing, answering something like this, it's all dependent upon how you build your system and your data structure. But that would be the first thing that I would look at. Is there a way that I could change my system so that it's less, so that I'm doing less, right? But still getting to the same answers, the same variables, the same numbers, the same lists, right? If you can't do that, right, then yeah, the next thing that I would do is migrate your big tables to SQL servers. Don't migrate your whole thing, because being able to use spreadsheets, right, there's a lot of ease of use with a spreadsheet that you lose when you move over to a SQL server. It's an entirely different beast. So if I can, I always try and keep as much inside the spreadsheets, because that means that, it's easy for me to work with. I can give it to somebody else. They can work with it, blah, blah, blah. So just take the few tables that you have that are starting to get really, really big and move those over to your SQL Server. That's the solution that I've done I have some clients where we have an app that collects unreal amount of data all the time, and that's what we did. And then once you're inside the SQL Server, you can manage that over there. You can create different views for, like archiving data out. Like, I only want to show a year's worth of data versus everything. I don't even know, right? But you can do all kinds of stuff like that. And it'll be really hyper efficient because it's done on your SQL Server versus being done inside your app on your device or something. Let me see. I have some notes that I made here. Yeah, so that's all I got for that. Yeah. So first, see if you can reduce the number of things that are happening. That's really where I kind of stress. Try and see if that's what you could do. Another thing also. You might be able to, like you say, you're already using security filters to manage the data. So that's just removing the data that's visible inside the app. The other thing you might do is create a system to move data out of the sheets to another one. But don't use partitioning to bring those into the app. You know what I mean? You could if you wanted, but usually, like, when you get to that point, the data that's over there, like, you're going to want to go look at it with BigQuery, with Data Studio. You're going to want to start using other analysis tools, because I'm dealing with 2, 3, 4 years worth of data. And to be honest, you will be better served to use those tools because they are natively made for that exact sort of thing that you're trying to do. So then the idea becomes, like, I've got my primary database where it's in Google Sheets, and then I've got like some archive sheets and then I've got a bot that every once in a while, or a script that every once in a while, once a month or whatever, it takes these and it says, yep, nope, moving them over there, done. Lots of different ways to do this. Like, that's the beauty of AppSheet. There's always another way. The last question that I'm going to go over here before I go into a deep dive on the new sample app that I have that I'm going to be putting out on Tuesday. The last question comes from Brad, and it's all about looping and running into the problem of an infinite loop. If you've ever been there, it's always kind of like, oh man, I don't know what to do. All right, so what if I won't read all of this. I'll leave it up here if you want to read it yourself. The bulk of what he's talking about here is he created a loop, and the loop works perfectly fine when I execute it client side. But it runs into an infinite problem when I try and execute that through automation. That's the key difference. That's the key thing with looping, the actual action looping thing. You can't do action looping through automation. It doesn't work. The reason why is because because of parallel processing. Whenever you run something through automation, it's run in parallel, versus when you're doing looping like this on the device, client side, it's doing it one by one. It's doing it. So there is no parallel processing that's going on there. There is no efficiencies. That's the word I was looking for. There's no efficiencies there. It's sort of a brute force way of doing it. So you can't do action looping through automation. It doesn't work. You can change how you're doing your action looping to run in parallel, but that's an entirely different beast. And like that largely only works with one layer of looping. As in, I have a parent and I need to loop through all of these children and then be done. It's exceedingly difficult. I've managed to get it to work, but it was messy, and I'm not advocating anybody try and do it. It's not the way to go. To where I had like several parents that I needed to do, and then it would loop through each one. Like trying to get looping to work in automation is, you're just going to run into problems all over the place. It's not the way to go. What you need to do is you need to change the execution of the action that actually does the thing that you're doing. So what do I mean by that? I mean, you need to change the way that that action's formulated so that it's not doing that whole, remaining items index the first thing out of that list. Like, you can't do that, because if you think about when I'm running something in parallel, my list of remaining things, like I've got a core license myself, which means I have four degrees of parallelism. So there's 4 tracks of processing at once. So that loop is really running 4 parallel streams. So if you just think about that, like when this guy is trying to find out what's the remaining things, well, how does it know? Because these other 3 are doing something too, right? So like it pulls the first one and then it starts doing whatever. And then while this one's processing, this one's like, okay, I'm ready to do the next one. And it grabs the first thing out of the list, the one that this one's doing right now. And so that's where you get into an infinite loop, because each one starts pulling the same one from the first thing. And it just forever. It'll just go. Maybe eventually it'll stop. There are things that AppSheet has put in place to catch these infinite loops and kill them so that they don't break the server. If you've been part of AppSheet for a while, since before it was part of Google, really, there was certain times where AppSheet would crash. Most of the time when AppSheet would crash, the reason was because there was some infinite loop running on a server somewhere, and it just took over the server. They put stuff in place to solve that, right? So you don't really have to worry about that. It'll eventually stop. But you do have to completely reformulate how you're doing what you're doing. The whole idea, you have got to take the whole idea of that remaining whatever. You can't do that. That whole concept has got to go away. You can't do a remaining whatever. The action that's executing the thing that you want to do, you need to make that in such a way that I can say, here's a record, run that action on that. And it does whatever it needs to do. All the appropriate connections are made the where it's supposed to be made, but it's not dependent upon anything else. It's not dependent upon one after the other, right? It's, here's a record, run the action on it. When you get to that point, that's when you can say, here's a group of records, run that action on them. When you get to that point, then you can run your looping in automation, because you're not really looping anymore. It's now a group parallel process. And to be honest with you, when you execute that client side, it executes in parallel. If you watch the data as it comes in, you'll notice the data comes in. So I have 4 degrees of parallelism. When I watch the data from like a large loop like that come in, it comes in groups of 4. Like I can see the edits coming into the rows, and it'll skip a whole bunch of records. And I'll be like, what's going on? Why isn't it just going down the list? But then like it'll go all the way down, it'll get down to the bottom, and then it'll do another one. And then it'll do another one. And then it'll fill in all the blanks. It's because I have 4 degrees of parallelism, and all of that was being done in parallel. It's difficult. It's difficult to get to that point because you have to completely reformulate how things are happening. And sometimes you can't do that. Like there are several times to where there is no way to create your looping to run in automation. It's just not, it's not possible because you have so many layers that are going on, and because of parallel processing, it's really difficult to try and get that layer thing to work. just to tell you, the way that I had to go to get that to work is I had to build a branch inside my automation for each of the categories. I wasn't able to say, here's a process for the categories and execute that process on all of the categories. Like, I couldn't do that because it ran in parallel. And that's not what I needed it to run serially, right? And so like on my automation, it was like category 1, do the loop. Category 2, do the loop. Category 3, do the loop. It was like, that's not the way to go. You know what I mean? It worked, kinda, but if I ever expanded it or changed it or whatever, I'd have to go and redo all of that all over again. Yeah, sometimes you just have to do it client side. That's all I got for that. Hope it helps. Sorry, I don't really have a good answer for you there, Hennie. I will respond to you with a few more specifics. Maybe I could give you a formula that you might be able to work with in email. The last thing I'm going to go over here before I jump into questions, if you've got them, I see there's one. Any other ones? Drop them in there. Last thing I'm going over is on Tuesday, I plan on releasing a new sample app. This one, as I kind of teased at the beginning of this live stream, could be considered, in many respects, a universal app. And what do I mean by that? I mean that with this, you can basically fill in a lot of the scenario blanks where you need to collect data. Most of the time, what is it? You've got these data points that you need to collect. You need some way to collect those data points and collect those data points over and over and over again. This app basically lets you do that. Let me walk through the basics of what's going on here. So if I go to the tables, and if you ignore the three amigos, you can see, and you can ignore welcome, obviously. It's just a welcome page. But there are a few, whoa, here we go. There is a few groupings of tables that I'll go over here. So the first one I'll touch on, because it's the easiest one to understand, is inspections and inspection items. Obviously, the whole idea with this app is we're doing an inspection. It's not limited to that. I'll touch on that more later. But that's the idea, right? I've got this checklist of items that I need to collect, and I need to go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cool, we did the inspection. Hey, happy days. So the inspections table is the parent of the inspection. It's the actual inspection where we're saying this person on this date is doing this inspection on this thing, right? And then the inspection items are the individual things that we're doing. That's group number 1. The easiest to understand. The next group to understand is what I call entity groups. Oops, that's not the right one. Is entity groups. So what is this? As I alluded when I was talking about the inspection includes this is the thing we are inspecting. Entity groups is the group of things that you need to inspect. Now I did this because this gives you the ability to have anything that you want inside here. What do we want to inspect? Vehicles? What do we need to collect data from? Employees? What checklists do we need to do that we need to make sure that we're done? Maybe I have kitchens and I need to make sure that we do an end of shift checklist. So by adding in an entity group, right, it gives you the ability to add in anything that you want to collect data against. And then the entities to inspect is the individual things for the group that you want to collect data on. My group is vehicles, so I have a 2004 Camry, I've got a 1990 whatever, I've got, see what I mean? My group is employees, I have Matt, Mark, Sarah, whatever. You get what I'm going with this? My entity group is kitchens, and I've got kitchen number 1, kitchen number 2, kitchen number 3. My thing is inventory locations, and I've got location 1, location 2, location 3. So where I'm going with this? You can do anything with this that you would want. That's the second group. The next group is harder to understand just because of labels. Really, it's just a label problem. I call it Catalogue. Catalog and catalog items. The idea behind this is largely a mirror of the inspections. So I could have called this catalog inspections, and maybe that might have made the connection a bit more clear, but this isn't an inspection app. You can use this for anything. Questionnaires, checklists, you name it, man. Or inspections, but inspection's the easiest thing to kind of center your mind around, like this is what's going on. The catalog is your catalog of inspections. So as the inspection table down here is the parent to the inspection items that we're collecting, the catalog is the parent to the catalog items, which are the things that we need to collect. So by combining all three of these things together, I'm able to put into this system, these are the things that we need to collect data for. These are the individual pieces of data that we need to collect. And these are the datas that we have collected on these things for the items that we need to collect. By those three combined, I am Captain Planet. No, like by all those, you can literally, like this fits in a real rough way. Like it's not perfect, right? It's not, it's not natively built for whatever it is that you're trying to do. But with this sort of system, you can largely create, just by entering records into the database, a system to collect 90% of the data that you're probably going to need to collect. Clearly, it doesn't have any kind of flows from one thing to another. It doesn't have any kind of like validations or whatnot. Maybe, it could, future advancements. But it gives you the ability to like build, maybe even like a, like just proof of concept type of thing. So let me go over it. And then obviously there's a user table because, users, you got to have a user table. So if we just start here, right? All right, so users are the users of the system, obviously. If we go to entities, so these are the groups, and just like I was talking about, I have employees, kitchens, and vehicles. If I go into, let's go to kitchens, right? So then I have my related entities to inspect, and I've put in here my awesome restaurant kitchen, because I have an awesome restaurant kitchen. Not really, but hey. So this is the group, kitchens, and this is the individual thing that I need to collect data for, my awesome restaurant kitchen. So if we go back and we say the group is vehicles, I can enter in all of the things that I need to collect data for. I've got a 2004 Toyota Camry, a Mack truck number 43. Add in all of the vehicles that we need to collect data for. Put them in here. I've got a list, I've got a group of employees where then I can add in my list of employees. Maybe this is a list of clients, right? All right, so this is one side of things. These are the things that we need to collect data for, okay? Now, moving on to the other side of things, we've got the catalog. So the catalog is, these are the datas that we need to collect. So if I just look through what I've entered in here, I have one that is contact info, one that is an end of shift checklist, and one that is a pre-trip inspection. One for each of those categories. So, and you can see the categories I have over here, right? So if we start at the top, so for my employees, I have this contact info catalog, right? And inside there, I've come down here and I've specified these are the items that I want to collect for this catalog, all right? I want their name, and their name data type is a text. Their email is an email, their phone's a phone, their image is a photo, and the best time to contact them is an enum. What is all of this data type stuff? Well, let me show you. So if we go and we look at the inspection items itself. So inspection items is the child table to the inspection where we're actually collecting the individual data points for the things that we're supposed to be collecting. Okay, so this is like bottom of the database, bottom of the hierarchy. This is like the data that everything else is using. Inside here, what I've done, the magic that makes this a pseudo-universal system is if you look here, in the inspection items table, I have this group of all of these items, of all of these fields right here. I've got a text entry field, that's a long text. I have a photo, that's an image. I have an enum, that's an enum. An enum list, that's an enum list. Blah, 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 all the way down, right? And if I go and I show you, just let's say this enum entry, if I go to the show if formula for this, you can see it's got a formula on here to where we only show it inside the form, and we only show it if the catalog item that I'm doing, if that thing's data type is an enum. Same thing for if I come down here to the phone entry. It only shows me if the catalog item's data type is phone. Same thing for the photo entry. Only if the catalog item's data type is photo. Okay, so what is this catalog item data type? Okay, so if we go and we look at the catalog items, what I've done inside here is, so this is the child table to the catalog. These are the blueprint records that tell the system, these are the data points that we need. Okay, not only do we need to tell the system, these are the data points, like the name of the data point, and maybe a description of the data point that we're trying to collect, but we also need to tell it what kind of data. Because the entry, the field that you will use to collect data for a text is very different from an enum, which is very different from a number, which is very different from a photo. I can't use the same field for any of those. That's why in the inspection items form, I have one column for each of the each of the data types that I've included inside the system. I haven't included all of them. I've only included the ones that I want to use, but it's all the primary ones. Some of the ancillary ones I left out. So inside the catalog items, this is the side of the database where I'm telling the system, this is the data point that I want, this is its type, and then I've got a whole bunch of other stuff that I've included as well. So like, let's say that I say the thing I'm collecting is a number. Well, I can put a number min and a number max on that. I can also have, is this required for them to answer? Yes or no? Right? Maybe it's a data point that's not that important for us, so we could let them skip it. Let's keep going down here. You've got an image, so you can add like an image as an example of what this person needs to do. I've got a space for you to type in how-to steps. So if you want to include how-to information to collect the data point that you're trying to get from the person, you can include a photo. That'll, it could be whatever, an illustration or what, or a photo with some markup on it, right? And then literally step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 for each data point that you're collecting, each of the catalog items. Keep going here, there's more. This gets really crazy here. Now we get into, is it required after this item? I've included a way for you to say, this item that I want is a follow-up to something else. As in, did you turn off the lights? Yes or no? If somebody says no, why? Why didn't you turn off the lights? And it's required for you to type in some text and give me a reason. This system allows you to create any kind of follow-up chain that you would want. Not only can you specify this item follows something else, but you can also specify it's required based on a value that somebody selected in the previous answer. Getting crazy, man. Getting crazy. I also included, so what if you're collecting a piece of data, but there is no piece of data, right? Like what if in the questionnaire that I'm creating for people to collect, to collect these answers, maybe I want to include the ability for them to say not applicable, right? I've included this alt answer space down here to where you can specify yes or no, should I allow them to use an alternative answer? And if it is, what is it that it is? And then the very last section of this is for each of these data points that you include inside your system, I have an analytics section that collects some real basic, broad, high-level stuff. What was the minimum time that it took for somebody to collect the data point, the max, the average? What was the total number of times that the thing has been skipped, so on and so forth. Just some high-level analysis that will just, every day, do a statistical analysis over all of the answers that people have done and give you a nice little high-level overview of everything that's going on. Crazy, right? All right, so let's demo what this looks like. So if I come inside here, and you can see I already have a current inspection that I've got going on. If I come in here and I say, so this is the pre-trip inspection for my 2004 Toyota Camry. And you can see I have 3 items remaining. And so displayed right here on top are my items that are remaining. Okay, this is almost the same exact thing, the same mechanisms, right, that I used for all of these other sample apps that I've been putting out, like shopping cart stuff and all of these things. They all kind of use this same sort of stuff. I've got the current inspection held inside of a slice that's holding it as a global variable, just like the shopping cart. So the shopping cart, when I say that I'm starting an order, right, that order that I'm building is held inside of a slice as a global variable. And that then informs the entirety of the system that, hey, this person's doing something. And then whatever you're doing, that's the item that's connected to whenever you tap on an item, whatever parent you're looking at, that's connected to the child record that's made. Now this system varies, it is different from the shopping cart because the shopping cart is built in such a way that it only allows one order to be built at a time. You can't do 2 things at once. You can only do one. This inspection app I've built in such a way to where you can have any number of inspections that you want running at once. And the system is configured so that it still works, that when I come into here, when I come into my current inspection that I'm doing, and I select one of these items, it is connected to the right parent. Now, all of this is going to be available to view and for you to make a copy of this and to play with it. And I'll have not only this little snippet of this video, but I'll also do some further deep dives on how certain things are put together so that you can really see how this app works and what you can do, what you can do with it. But yeah, this is the next sample app that I have that I'm putting out here. It's obviously this is going to be a big thing. My hope here, right, is that this is a start for another evolution series. So the shopping cart is an evolution series. I've got the report builder. That's another one that I'm doing. I want to start this as another one of these evolution things, right? So this is the base version of the app. I didn't create a how-to video for this because it's crazy. And I included a lot of things that are like a lot of really high-level things that I will eventually go over, such as you may have noticed that if I'm on my current inspection and I select one of the items that I'm doing, I'm taken to the form and there's these navigation buttons down here. So I've never talked about what these navigation button things are, how they work, how to make them work, how to get it smooth inside your system. This is one of the first times that I'm including them inside of an app like this where I'll show how to do it. So make sure you tune in on Tuesday. That's when this will come out. Happy days. All right, I'm gonna move on to the last section here, your questions. Yeah. Got the original thing back on. All right, coming into the chat here. Thanks for showing up, everybody. I appreciate it. Hamlet Light, Mr. Stott, what's up, buddy? Oscar's in the house. Luis, what's up, buddy? All right, let's see. What do we got here? Light asks the question, how can I make a user sync possible? Like when some other user edits the data, how can I get user 2 to instantly see it on the screen? Yeah, unfortunately, Light, that is not possible inside AppSheet. There are things that you can do. There's some discussion that's been done inside the community about, some workarounds that you can do to kind of make something kind of work in this scenario, but largely the answer is no here. AppSheet itself is built off of like an asynchronous connection setup. So like, I'm on my phone and I could lose internet on my phone. The whole idea is I can keep moving forward on my phone because my phone has everything that it needs in order to, it has all the data, blah, 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 blah. So that's where you run into that sort of problem where, I'm here kind of like an island by myself and you're over there, an island all by yourself, and we're just coordinating with the cloud. Like that's what's going on. And so there really is no way to get it like when I do this, you see it over there. The solution for this is, it's not a perfect solution. The thing that you can do, like you can create notification systems, right? So if I'm using a device and I've got the actual app installed on the device, like I can do push notifications to people. And so you could create a system to where when somebody does, whatever change in the database that requires this sort of, hey, everybody, make sure you do whatever, you can throw a notification to people, throw an email, send a text message. That's really kind of like the only thing that you got for a solution for this is like, you can just push a thing to people and that way they know, they're like, oh, yeah, I better go do the whatever. But that means that person has to go do the whatever in order for it to work. You know what I mean? If the problem that you're trying to solve for, a lot of times I get asked this question and they're asking the question, but the real question is, I've got 2 users that are modifying the same record and people are overwriting each other's data. That's usually kind of the scenario that's happening in this. Light, you could let me know if that's what you got, if you're still here. But if you're like, when you're in a scenario like that, like the general rule of thumb when you're creating your app is you don't want a scenario where multiple users are modifying the same record at the same time. The thing you might do, you can usually find ways where there's actually a separation between when one person's doing and another person's doing. So you can build your system so there's that natural separation there, maybe with like a status, right? And base editability of something on the role that somebody has. So you can see the edit button if your role is whatever and the status of this record is whatever, right? You can do things like that. I can't remember where I was going. I can't remember where I was going with that one. Yeah, but like there is no good solution. Oh, I remember. So modifying the same record. The real thing to do is to not do that. Is to completely change the structure of that scenario to where instead of both users looking at the same record and then like changing a value on that, instead of doing that, have the users create a record in a subtable, and then have that original record have a virtual column or an automation or an action or something that then uses the child record information and does whatever it needs to do for the parent. The reason being, each user is then modifying their own record, so there's no crosstalk there. And you can build a system to where you can have intelligence, like an automation that's looking at the creation of the child records, and it's looking to see if there's a duplicate. And like if there is a duplicate, maybe reject the duplicate. Like flag that record as duplicate, send an email to the person that created it going, sorry, somebody already did this, you got it too late. You know what I mean? do something like that. No real good solution. Yeah, you know what I mean? Notification system in his browser. Yeah, there are other things for notifications in the browser. You can use, what's it called? Pushpad. I've implemented that. Pushpad's actually really, really dope. You can do that. So Oscar, yeah, I see you're saying that you can't do it in the browser. Yeah, check out Pushpad. It's you have to do it through webhooks in order to use it. This was actually the system that was implemented for push notifications before AppSheet had native push notifications. It's kind of weird to work with, kind of weird, but it's also really kind of fun. Really kind of, you can do a lot of really powerful things with it. But you know, it's a native push notification system. Whatever. No good solution. You know what I mean? It's all workarounds, and I hate workarounds like this. Oscar's here. He's what is it? This group action is like a save action. There's a lot of different ones inside. This group action is like a save action that has a lot of different ones inside it depending on the conditions. Yeah, so Oscar's asking about that tap action that I was showing previously, to where when you tapped on it, there was like 5 things that happened. Same idea as the save event action. Yeah, so like when I save the form, there's a whole bunch of things that go off, but maybe only 1 or 2 of those happen based on the conditions. It's the same thing. When I tap on it, same concept. Yeah, absolutely. That sort of like create a stack of things to do and then put conditions on the individual things inside them. That I find myself using that all over the place. You can create incredibly powerful action-based like automation things and like data changes to where when I'm here, if this, do that, then do this, then do, you know, it's like automation, but it's all happening client side. You can get really crazy like that. Light is asking, do you freelancing? Who does it? Oscar? I'm waiting for Oscar to break out and say, yeah, I'm finally doing freelancing. I do. I also do one-on-one like tutoring if you want. I've been thinking I need to put a whole bunch I need to make like a menu of options of like the things that people could get from me. Like one of the things that I have a lot of people that found really, really helpful was, you're starting a big project. It'd be kind of nice to get somebody's eyes on your project at the very beginning to give you some advice about future proofing, and you know what I mean? So like that's also a thing that I actually rather enjoy doing that, because I get exposed to all of these different builds that people have done and how they do it and everything. It's fascinating. But yeah, you know, if you're interested in stuff like that, head on over to my website, multitechvisions.com. You can see what's going on over there. Hamlet has a question. Could you make a video for creating a logging system for an app using Google Scripts so that every change is registered on a Google Docs document? You know, there's been a lot of chatter in the community recently about creating some sort of logging systems, and it's usually coming about because like automation failed and it didn't do something, and there was no notification that the thing didn't happen. I'll look into it, sure, yeah. But my general rule of thumb, not really rule of thumb, but like what I've kind of come up with for logging like that is the standard starting template. It's got that creation metadata section and the edit metadata section, and then the count of how many times it's been modified. And that I've had apps that I've built go through federal security audits, and like I was completely unaware that like the FBI was looking at my database and making sure that it was built the right way. Like I had no idea that was going on. And it was, my client was like, oh hey, by the way, this happened over the weekend. It's like, what? They're like, yeah, totally. Passed with flying colors. Happy days. They were like, no, you passed. It would have been nice if you would have had this. And that's when I added that to the standard starting template. Like, that's the evolution of all of the years of problems that I've had where I've fallen into a hole and it's like, man, I really wish I would have had something to solve this problem. That standard starting template is all of that stuff. So yeah, check that out. But yeah, I'm thinking instead of using scripts or something, I might make a bot that does that. I don't know. I'm not sure how I'll do it. But yeah, definitely something to look for. Let's see. Oscar's got a question. How do you help people justify AppSheet's cost if their solution is not very complex? So I try to tell them that they can have a whole set of apps like modules on an ERP. What's your take? Yeah, so justifying the cost of AppSheet if they're not doing very much. Yeah, I'll usually, my thing is I usually don't have to sell people. I usually don't have to sell very much. I can just talk about what I've done, the apps that I've helped people with, the systems I've seen built over the years, the problems I've fallen in, and that usually does all the selling for me. And like in this instance where someone's like, oh, it's so expensive and we just do whatever, that's when you start exposing, you're right, yeah, but you're just thinking about this one little thing. You're not thinking, well, we could also do this, we could also do this. When you do this, we could use a bot that does X, Y, Z, it creates an email, it does this, does that, blah, 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 blah. We could do automatic invoicing, we could do this, right? You start talking about like, well, these are all of the other things that we could throw on top of what you're doing that any business person is going to want. They're going to want this ability to where when I tap a button and it does something in a certain situation, it automatically sends an email to somebody. That way they don't have to do it. Everybody wants that. Everybody wants that. We're all lazy. It'd be great to have that. It's just most of the time when people are first exposed to something like this, they're unaware of all of the possibilities that's happening. In their mind, they're seeing a small little, it's like they're looking through a port window into the engine room, and they're like, doesn't look impressive. It's like, yeah, well, you were just looking through one tiny little window from this one viewpoint. What if you were to go and open the door and walk in the room? I bet you'd be really impressed by what's going on over there. Or go to the back of the room and then look underneath the machine and to look at how that little thing's working over there. I bet you'd be really surprised that that's possible, you know? I use a lot of analogies to talk about things. I don't know. Hey, I find it helps, you know? I'm a visual person, and if I can encapsulate the idea of what we're talking about in some other scenario, it makes it easy. Well, what else we got here? I gotta find a way to like take this chat thing and make it appear on the screen right next to me. It's my next task for this live stream, just to create a chat thing so you can see the chat. Let's see here. Hamlet. He's talking about using those columns for the yep, I'm using those change columns from your starting template, just looking to expand it more. Talking about the logging system. I hear you, man. Let's see. Hamlet also asks, thank you so much for making those PDFs explaining every aspect of the starting table template. You are welcome, Hamlet. I know that stuff can get really complex really fast. I have a follow-up that I'm going to do for that grouping thing. So the reports sample app number 2, I do grouping, but I only do one group. Like I only have one layer. So I'm going to do a follow-up to that. It's in the works right now, where I'm going to actually create an infinite layer in the middle. So I'll have like one layer at the top, then I'll have another layer in the middle that'll be an infinite layer, so that you can create any number of layers inside this middle part that you want, and then you got the bottom layer that's the actual data points. So I'm going to go over how you can do that in the next version of that video. Stay tuned. Oscar says, well, I do the same actually, probably talking about justifying the cost. You pay for the whole set of features and you need to use them to justify the cost. Most people have no idea about the features. They think that it's just a mobile app. Talking about justifying the cost there. Another thing that that's the main selling point, like the real selling point. The features is, yeah, obviously, like that's a huge thing. But like the real main selling point between why use AppSheet versus let's just build something in Python If you build it in Python, what happens when iOS 23 comes out? All right, well, whoever built your thing in Python has now got to go through and rebuild it for iOS 23. What happens when Android pushes some fix that causes a break? Your Python guy now needs to go through and make that fix. Every time there's a push for web browsers, for Android or iOS, every time you're going to have your developer go back and make adjustments to the app. With AppSheet, the monthly subscription, that's what you're paying for. And you're not paying for it in a way of like the developer, no offense to any person that you would go find, but the developer that you found to work on your app is probably not at the same level of competence and skill as the developers that are employed by Google. You follow what I mean here? Like, takes a lot to get hired by Google. You got to be pretty damn good at what you're doing to get over there. Okay, those are the people that are maintaining the app for you. Every time there's something that comes out, they're updating it. They're also doing daily updates for like bug fixes and things. So like these are the things that I like when they start harping on the AppSheet platform, like, oh, but I have to pay a monthly whatever. Those are the things that I go for over there. Is that yes, but what you're paying for is minuscule compared to what you would normally pay your traditional developer to fill those gaps every time the problem comes about. That's whenever I do that one, that's usually the one where like that they have nothing to say after that one. Like that's the one that usually sells it. Let's see, last one here from Light. Hey Matt, I would like to add, go into detail, in a grouped function that a system function doesn't seem to be available. Is there a way that we could recreate it that also supports in a dashboard? Let me read that one more time. Hey Matt, I would like to add in a grouped function, but that system function doesn't seem to be available. Is there a way that we could recreate that also supports it in dashboards? Okay, so the grouping, right, is all about layers of references inside your database. Like, I've got a list of products, and so in my, let me get it open here. I'll get it open for you. Let me find sample app, shopping cart, donde estas, shopping cart. Okay, so over here in my shopping cart app, right? So come on, you could load, let's go. It doesn't want to load. There we go. All right, so inside here, like I've got, well, okay, this isn't the good one to use. No. I need reports. I don't know what I was thinking. Sorry. I need the reports one. This is the one to use. Okay, inside the grouping thing, the way that you can include grouping inside your database, inside your dashboard, is by creating an enhanced dashboard. I have a sample app for it. I have a video that shows how to do it. You can check that out. I'm just looking for the app itself, and I can open that and you can look at it. But it kind of runs along the same idea of the reports, where I've got job types as my grouping, right? Okay, now if you want to include multiple groupings inside your inside your interactive or your enhanced dashboard, or same thing inside your report, you need to have more layers inside your database. So like I've got construction job entries and I've got job types. Now, if I also wanted to have like sub job types, right? The way that I'd go about that is I would create another layer inside my system for this other grouping that we're talking about. The point with that is when you create the other layers, this kind of harkens back to like what I was talking about before with this group thing. It gives you space, not only horizontally, but it gives you space vertically so that you can expand that way as well. But also in like I don't know, another dimension, in the sense of you can use inside your enhanced dashboard. If I go and I look at it, I've got my control box, right? And each one of these fields is one of those reference tables inside my list. And so like I have construction type, this is one field. If I had a subtype that was based on whatever, like roofing metal, and then say there was another subtype based on roofing metal, that's whatever. And then maybe there's another one for that, right? And then another one for that. Each one of those things, I would create a different layer inside my database, because that then gives me the ability to have all kinds of easy groupings and things. It opens up a boatload of future proofing that you're going to want, that you're probably not thinking about now. One of those is in my dashboard here. I have the ability to where I can have my primary type, and then I could have another type, and then I could have my other one. You get where I'm going with this? Like, and I can have all of these different ones listed inside here to where I select one, and then I get a subtype, and I get a subtype, and I get a subtype. And the only way, there obviously...
Where are you going? Another way. Always another way.
Obviously, there's always another way, but the only way to really get the thing to work in a smooth way that's going to help you in the future, and you know what I mean? Like, include the layer. So that's what you need to do if you want to have more groupings inside the thing. Create more space. Create layers in your database, or just create more vertical columns and add in more, like you can do it that way too. I prefer the database, adding the layers in the database. That's my favorite way to do it. Just, it sets you up for future proofing, because like that's the thing, is like most of the time we're thinking about the thing that we're trying to solve now, and like we're here. And it's like we're not really thinking about, well, after I solve this and then it gets stable and then we collect a year's worth of data, at that point I'm going to want to be able to do this with this stuff. Some of these things kind of, if you do these now, they really set you up for the future to where you could really do a lot of stuff. Oscar is asking, and I think maybe Light, they're having a little discussion here, am I using OBS and Streamlabs? Yes, sir, I am. And yeah, I saw the desktop chat box thing. It's just been a matter of me. I actually have a thing installed, but like it didn't work. I don't know if I have it on here. Maybe I could go to it and see if it would work or not. But like, yeah, I tried it, but it didn't want to show the chat, which was weird. Like, I could get the thing, I could get the widget inside the whatever, but when I tried to get the actual text to show up, it wouldn't show the actual text. Technical difficulties. But anyways, that's what I got here. One last question, last one. Last one from Oscar. He says, what is your experience with data partitions and horizontal scaling stuff? That, sir, is deep topic. Yeah. My experience, I have some apps with some clients to where we collect boatloads of data, and we've had to go through the whole gamut of all of the things. If you go into the community and you see a lot of the discussions about like how to solve a lot of the problems, if you look at the older posts, you'll see a lot of those are probably from me, because I ran into a problem and I was trying to find a way to solve it. Yeah, I've kind of been down like all those roads. Like, okay, well, we need to reduce the virtualization. We need to reduce the virtual columns that we have. We need to reduce the slices we have. We need to cache things if we can in physical columns. We need to move formulas out of an app formula space and instead put that inside of an action that's conditionally running only in the certain instances when we need that really heavy thing to work. Migrating records out of a table so that we only have the active stuff. Like all of these things that I kind of talk about, these are the things that like I ran into all of these problems years ago and had to figure out how to solve these problems. Migrating those primary data tables, the ones where you see we're collecting 100,000 records a year, migrating those to a SQL server so that it runs on just inherently more efficient systems. That's largely the, if I was to say there's like a progression for things, like there is an evolution that happens. You start in Google Sheets, it starts to get too big, you start expanding that to maybe a couple of Google Sheets, it continues to get too big, you then move those to a SQL server, and you're basically good forever at that point. It's just a matter of managing the SQL server. Last question, I'll give it to you. Have you thought of making this live stream on another platform that allows live interaction with the audience, such as like Twitch and things? Yeah, I have, yeah. Doing the whole simulcast type of thing. I have. It's a lot of work. I know it doesn't seem like it, but it's a lot of work. Trying to get those things set up, it'll take a few hours here and then and then ongoing stuff and whatever. And, I need like 36 hours in the day. I've got this, I've got my apps that I'm doing, I've got clients that I work with, and I also work with people one-on-one with their little things. I'm getting to the point of like, when I first started my business, like there was that time where I was full-time employee and I was doing my own business thing on the side, and like there was no life and it was just work, 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 work. I feel like I'm back in that now. Like, I feel like I'm like the mental space that I felt back then, I feel like I'm in that now again. Not a bad thing, but just got to manage your time a little better. But anyways, that's all of that. Let's see if I can go over. Oh, we can go back over here. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. If you like what I do, make sure you subscribe. That really does. It's a good boost, confident boost for me. If you really want to show your support, it's $10 a month. You can go on over to patreon.com. No, the thing's not down there. I got a bunch of goodies over there. I try and do any kind of the newer things that I'm releasing. I try and get those out to my patrons first so that they can get a little taste of what's going on and be my beta testers. But anyways, that's this week. Thanks for watching. Enjoy. Get outside. Enjoy the weather if you can. See you in the community, everybody.